Hello, at least I hope. Let me know if you can see me. Technical problems abound today, as ever. I started with one before I even started streaming. It seemed like I had a USB port that was going bad, and I was going to have to pick between the face cam and the miniature cam. Of course, I would have chosen the miniature cam. But then when I was ready to go, Reaper had some kind of problem. Apparently, it started just at the end of Anne's show, and the title changed itself. Title changed itself to what? I don't know. And I keep forgetting to give titles to just like specific titles for the show. I don't know if that's something you can fix, Quinty. Is anyone else out there, or did you all give up because it was so, I was late in starting? But, so I was going to try to do sort of a finish up February episode today, but I guess it turned into an effed up tech episode. But, Quinty does it. Yeah, when I came onto Twitch to start the chat thing, it said mine was like the most recent video, but then there was like the screenshot was Ed, so I was confused. Something's going on clearly. So I don't know if you can fix that, or do you need me to start streaming again or something? I don't know. Or is that something, we'll fix it in post? Is it one of those things? Just watching the chat to see what Quinty said. So I don't know if anyone was out there that wasn't reading the chat. I was trying to keep you updated about that we were having the technical problem. So I'll switch over to my double view. Turn on another thing. So because I'm guessing the notice only just went out. So I will just briefly update everyone about what's happening this month on Reaper. So these paints from the Kickstarter are now available on the Reaper site, I believe. So that's Black Indigo, Rich Indigo, and you could totally use Black Indigo as a shade. So it's not a classic triad because it's from the Kickstarter, and they rarely are. And then this is Wild Violet, which is new purple, and there's always room for new purple. It's like the Jello of paint, I guess. And what else is there this month? This is the Bones USA Miniature Month. Oh, I forgot that this thing is always dark. So let me know if it flares out, but I'll brighten it to that for now. So this is Nouse the Wag Halter. I am working on a post with some information on how I painted him and the colors and everything. But that's not what's up on my blog now. It will go up. I don't know if it'll be the next one, probably, but I don't know for sure because I still need to do the second half of the organizing and storing your paints. So I've done a blog post about organizing your paints with some suggestions for factors to consider and what might be the best organization system for you. But I wanted to share some storage options because everybody has, some people need something that's very compact for their desk. Some people need to be able to pack their paints away after every paint session because they don't have a permanent setup. Some people need a wall option. So some people need a portable option. So I'm trying to, hey, Nico. Yeah, there were some technical problems, but it's sorted out, looks like. So I'm collecting different options. I had someone on stream, and now I'm blanking who it was. I apologize. A few weeks ago shared a drawer organizer system, which was pretty cool, and I had not even thought about that. So if you have a method of organization that you've tried for your paints that you really like, shoot me a personal message here, or something you hated. That's cool too. I'm also happy to give people feedback on stuff that wasn't great. And so this guy is the Bones USA freebie. If you do the minimum purchase, which I believe is $40 US still, it's the shipping rate that changed. You will get a Bones USA version of this. This one is a Metal Master, which is why he fell over like that and why I'm going to put him safely to the side. And then another thing that's now available on Reaper, and just last night on Instagram, someone posted that they had completed this, which is very zippy of them. So I had hoped to have this for this week to at least kind of do like an unboxing and show you guys what's in the quick paint box and stuff. Although I do want to paint them on stream as well. But so I ordered from Reaper And in the before times, I think it would have been plenty of time for things to arrive. But between, you know, slowdowns and then I think there were weather issues, because even in my tracking, there was one day where it said, you know, delayed due to weather. But it originally said it was supposed to come on the 5th. And then it did. In fact, I think even today when I went to check, it still said expected delivery February 5th. And then it gave the updates for where it actually is, which is not here. So I cannot show you the contents. But so these are the, like, exemplar paints. I don't know what we call those. These are the guys I actually painted to take the pictures for the kit. And they really are, you know, they're straight from Kickstarter fulfillment guys. So they are not fancy masters or anything. Currently up on my blog is like the paint recipes and information I have for painting these guys with some work in progress pictures and stuff. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out. But now, what will we paint today? I want to finish my elf. We're so close. We're so close that I want to finish this guy. But I'm going to swap out my paper. Actually, I'm going to show you one other thing before I do that. So, something that did come in the mail. Oh, no, sorry. Apologies for being catty corner or whatever. I like to take care of my friends who get troubled by that sort of thing. Oh, I'm going to have to zoom way more out. In fact, yes, we can zoom all the way out. So, I've been using the Masterson style palette for like 100 years, as you can tell by the shape of the palette. There was at least one incident where a cat threw it on the floor, and that's why there's some paint all over the place. But lately, I've been having more trouble with mold than usual. It doesn't get like super grotty, but so this is a piece of paper towel that's over a sponge. Now, admittedly, everything I'm using is not Masterson other than the piece of plastic. So I don't use their sponge because it's yellow, and that kind of throws off my color. I don't know, it just bugs me to see the yellow thing, and it will throw off your color. I don't understand why they do it. Even traditional artists would find it troubling, other than their palette paper is so thick that you don't see the yellow as much. But it also doesn't seem to control the amount of moisture that goes in and out of the paint as precisely as people working with our kinds of paints would want. So I know like one person who likes the official palette paper that comes with it, and every other miniature painter I know has been like, no, just use parchment paper. So this is Reynolds, which I believe is the most popular. Actually, this might be Kroger, but I have not noticed any significant difference between brands. I did used to get Wilton. It was a little thicker, and then I got an order from them, and because I would like order it special because it wasn't in the store. Like for a while I got it at Joann's, I think, but then it wasn't in the store anymore. But I ordered one and it was just crap. I mean, it fell apart, and like I don't think I'd even feel comfortable cooking with it. So I don't know if they had a mistake in the manufacturing or they sent me the wrong product or what. But so I switched over to like Reynolds or Kroger after that. So the problem I'll have is if I'm painting and I have this going for like a week or so, even if I am actively using the palette, when I do pull it up, this will feel slimy. So I know something's kind of growing in there. And what I have under here is some of this is pieces of copper sheet that you'd use for various craft purposes, and then pennies. But these are specific pennies because I think it's after 1986 or something. There's an age of the pennies when the copper content of pennies is not as... there's not as much copper in it, so it doesn't really work as a protection. So this penny is 1956. I got a real old one there. And this one is 64. So both of these pennies are actually older than I am, which is a feat. And for years, that had seemed to work really well for me, that the copper... This is why they make door handles out of copper, because it does work a little bit for germs. But whatever properties it had didn't work. And then some of you were probably here when I tried this stuff, which is a palette guard. But you need to put in 16 drops per ounce of water. And the sponge that I have and then this paper towel deal, there is a lot of water in there. Like, I would go through this in a month, probably. So that wasn't a great solution because that's too expensive. So as various Kickstarters came up, I am going to use this palette today for us. as various Kickstarters came up for palettes. So I started with I know Redgrass had put out a palette, but then they did a Kickstarter to kind of like improve it, and it was a little bit bigger. So I went in on that, and then this one came out after, and I was like, oh, it has so many nice features, but I already like ordered one of these things. But I'm like, nope, it's too cool. I think I'm gonna do it, and having multiple ones is gonna make it easier to switch between projects too, I think. So I got the Exemplar one. That's Game Envy. They're the same people that gave us these in our swag boxes for various Reaper events. Kuruniko said the palette isn't nearly as bad as Lucas from Miniatures Den. His wet palette gives me secondhand anxiety. Kuruniko, I have to ask if you've seen Aaron Lovejoy's, and how would you compare Lucas to Aaron's Lovejoy's? Because Aaron's kind of makes me twitchy. Like, I know he's just going to this, it's mostly paint, but it just looks so disgusting. Queenie says, I keep telling him to release that mold calling to the sewer system where it belongs. And Kuruniko, Queenie, it's my theory that the mold has taken over what we see as the Lucas-shaped mold mecca. Yeah, I don't know if that mold should be released to the sewer system. That could just cause other problems. I mean, so I broke this out last night for the first time. I just got it on Friday or something, I think. This is kind of a neat feature. You can, so a problem people will have with these is that you'll get condensation on the lid, and then that'll drip down into your paint like a terrarium, and make your paint more watery than it needs to be. So depending on your climate, you have different problems. So people would always say leave your lid a little ajar. So this is meant to be like a version of that. And this is kind of neat. So this part, you can put a phone or something here. So look at your reference pictures, watch a movie or whatever. I don't know if this holds a tablet or not. I haven't tested it. My tablet stands up on, like, I have a case where it stands up on its own, so I'm worried about it. I think you can put brushes in there too. You can put brushes or tube paints here. Obviously, you need to have some kind of the caps. You need to put the plastic caps on your brushes if you're going to keep them in something like that. Well, actually, that's not the only way to do it, because I keep forgetting about this myself. I have specific things for traveling with brushes, but for if you just want to travel with one or two brushes, or you have to pack your kit up every time you paint, if you use the poster putty, I mean, the brush holders I have are doing no more than that. So you kind of make your own custom holder. And then this tray pops in and out so you can make your washes. And you can make bigger washes there. I forget, there's something you're supposed to do with that, and I forget. There's a little sponge you can put in here, so you can do my thing with the sponge, but a travel version, so I will probably make use of that. And then while you're painting, the little ridges function this thing. So I haven't really used any of that yet, because I'm at home, I have my whole setup. But I did use this last night. I can't show you the miniature I'm working on, but I can show you the palette of colors, and you can, I don't think there are any conclusions you can come to about what is happening based on the selection of colors. But I mean, it is kind of inspired by something in the world, so that's like a super vague hint. But that's what I'm giving away today. That's one super vague hint. So I was really impressed. I was painting with it last night, and I do this, and you may have even seen during the show that I promise you're going to have the best success with a wet palette when you put a drop of paint in. Where's my paint? Here, it's like a wild violet. So if you keep your drop of paint kind of like that, and then you pull paint out from that, and you thin it, and you mix it, or whatever, you're going to have the best success with a wet palette, because you're keeping the main drop in a smaller thing, so there's less to evaporate and stuff. So this way that I use the wet palette, and I'm aware of this, is not ideal. Because I'm mixing colors, or I might be customizing, I might want a little more water in or whatever. And I don't mix on the brush. So I want my paint however I want it, and then I fiddle around with other things. So let's see. Lovejoy's palette isn't winning any awards either. I can't understand how he can stand it. He can understand a lot of weird things. Or he can withstand a lot of weird things. I think that's one of his special talents. But this stayed in great shape the whole time I was painting. There was one point, I got up, and because we had ordered out last night, so we had like cake or something. So I got up to go eat my cake, and I put the lid on. I didn't seal it, but I put the lid on. And when I came back, I noticed that there were like a couple of these little lines where I could kind of see an air bubble under it. So I just added a little bit of water. It kind of like here. Zoom in. Just like that. And the fact that it's coming back suggests I probably do need to put just a little bit more water in here. So it's this, it seems like a similar paper, but it's different in some way. And then this sponge is very thin. And even though, because like, you know, with the Masterson style wet palette, I would say, you know, you want it like this. You do almost want things floating. Because that was, when I first started using them, that was the problem I had. I was using a damp palette instead of a wet palette, and it didn't hardly work at all. So I'm just going to put a little smidge of water in here. Although I typically don't try to save my paint from one session to another. I don't mind having it there because it's very likely that I'll pick up this miniature tonight or tomorrow whenever I work on it again. And I'll go, oh, look, maybe I missed a spot or this blend isn't perfect and I might want to grab a few pieces of paint. But on the whole, yeah, you can kind of see even the paper kind of soaking it up. I don't know. It's kind of magical. But this is a very limited test. And I think once I get the other one, what's funny about this too is this was the last Kickstarter I backed, because I also backed and I can't remember what it is. There's like a carrying system. So if you want to travel, you can store paints and brushes and a couple of miniatures, I think, in this carry case, and it comes with a light. And it has like a few travel palettes in it. So technically I backed 3 palettes. I backed the travel thing first, then I backed the red grass, then I backed this. So this was the last one, and it's the first one to fulfill. And I'm not dogging anybody because there's so many problems with Chinese production and shipping and everything else, and, you know, COVID, that I fully, but I was having so many problems with my other palette that I'm like, I wish one of these would fulfill so that I could try something else. But I'm like really impressed with I'm not sure it's 100% the same when I get all of them. I think I want to do a test where, you know, I put them out and then put out paint, the same paint on each one, and then, you know, check the consistency and then wait an hour, open them up, check them, or leave them out actually, like as if I was working, and then close them all up overnight and check them again the next day. You know, be sciencey about it. So the science experiment would take too long to do on the show, but I think I want to do a little science experiment on there. Trash is still waiting on his Game Envy palette. Well, in the last update, they did sound like they were adding extra gifts to the ones that they're packing up now and sending out. So you may have to wait a little longer, but you're probably going to get more stuff than I did because I didn't get any additional things. Oh, it comes with this, which seems goofy, but it did actually work to smooth the paper on pretty well. So I'm just normally I would not be expecting much out of my paints if I woke up the next day, especially in winter, because it's very dry in it's not very dry in like Michael Proctor land. It's very dry in humid land. Then this one I had really just used in the approved manner, and so that's still, that I think actually is the black indigo. So I'll thin it out just a little so you can, yeah, that's the black indigo. It's not blue liner. But then some of these I had thinned a little bit for various uses. So you can tell I painted skin, and then I painted something this color, which there is a famous thing that is this color. But I don't think this is enough clues. But I'm not sure I'm allowed to reveal this thing yet. So I did not keep it on my desk. I put it somewhere else. And all you get to see is the palette. There is kind of a clue here in why there are 2 rows of each color. Well, there's kind of a clue as to how I'm painting. I don't know if it's a clue as to what I'm painting. But the fact that this row is like more saturated and normal looking, and this row is different. And it's not as defined over here, but it is kind of the same deal. And that was because of the specific colors that this is. There's a certain effect I'm painting that might be more obvious now. I'm worried it's going to be kind of easy to punch through this paper with the rubbing. So that will be something else to test. And when I test the Masterson, when I test the palettes, I do have a second one of these that I got for doing like traditional painting, the good old Mastersons, where I have their sponge and their papers and stuff. So I can test with the Masterson out of the box as well as the Masterson as most miniature painters use it. I will not click that shut because it will probably make an annoying loud noise that you guys won't like. Upside Down Mermaid. Well, there's a suggestion for Kickstarter 6 because Ron's all like, what is there left to make? I don't think he's made Upside Down Mermaid yet. I'm sure someone already suggested Reverse Centaur, so we won't go with that. Nico said those would be excellent colors for a fairy dragon. So let's check. I'm not sure that there is anything left on this guide other than the metal. Oh, well, the base. Let's do the base first. I do have my separate metallics little water container. And so I guess it doesn't really matter if I do the base or the other thing first. And then, I don't really have a gray or anything. So my choice, I'm going to wear my, talk about upside down, I'm going to wear my Gizmo upside down. There's a little kitty in here eating some dry food in case you hear strange noises. So he has like kind of your default, oh, the palette's not supposed to be right there, is it? Because we all know how the camera loves to focus on the wrong thing. So, hold on just a second. Try to make some space over here. I was a little off my game today starting up. Feeling 100%. Guess I wasn't done with the weekend. So there he is, a little closer up. We'll look at him a little closer still. So I need to put some liner around all these metal parts. Oh, I guess I haven't painted his little hands on it. And they are hands, not gloves, I think. But my dilemma is, it's kind of almost more like cobblestones than the... So if you look at this, Bobby at least has been putting this kind of texture on all the dungeon dwellers, I think. But since this guy, because these guys are also dungeon dwellers, and you can see it there. So just your basic stone base. But this guy's base almost looks more like cobblestones. So I don't feel as constrained that I have to paint it gray. And in fact, stone is not gray. That's a whole episode we should do someday, is that stone is not gray or something. So maybe I will do it more of a brown. Let's see if I can make my own grays, because sometimes that's fun. And a good way to do it is to combo your complementary colors. So this is kind of red, kind of green. My guess is that I will get something kind of gray if I mix them together. And in fact, sometimes it's a more interesting gray than one straight out of a bottle. Plus it goes with your miniature color scheme. So I will move this and let you guys watch the mixing and see if I just made something disgusting or I made something cool. Because it is disgusting. I just tried other colors that are in the thing. It looks like the red is a bit more powerful than the green. It's still very reddish. This thing is so wet that I can't tip it too much. So you get a neutral, but the neutral you get isn't always, strictly speaking, gray. It's still kind of brown, but see, it starts looking more gray. It's like, okay, well, it looks brown on my screen, but it looks more gray in my face. But let's compare it to actual brown. So this is the red color that I put in. That's like chestnut brown. Let's look for just boring browns. Here's faded khaki. Kind of a tan. What do I have here? I have, well, dark highlights is kind of a typical brown. So it's not that far away from the dark highlights, but it's a little more gray. Maybe I will put just a tinge of, well, I don't have black because I do line. Because the reason I'm doing this is I set a specific set of colors for this figure. And when I do that, I do like to try to mix anything that wasn't already part of it. So like anything that I didn't pick out for the color scheme, I like to try to mix. What I probably should have done is grabbed the matte color that matched kind of that color and used that. But now I don't remember what that color is. So I'm just gonna, since these are cobblestones and I just said stone doesn't have to be gray. Switch this back now though. You've seen the weird paint color. Then if I want to be really fancy, I will pull in some additional colors into some of the stones. Because there's no reason that all of these stones would necessarily be from the same source, and even if they are from the same source, rocks in the same place will vary slightly in colors. So uniformity is bad. But on the other hand, you know, it depends on what you're painting. If you're painting a bunch of guys and you gotta get their bases done quick, then maybe you're not going to do the world's most realistic cobblestone or whatever. But he's sort of an in-betweener figure, so maybe I'll give him a little something something. That may need a second coat. Just let it dry while I do the, did I put that blue liner? While I do some lining around the metal parts. Which is a little small one. I'll just use that anyway. Oh, I meant to bring over like a really enormous brush. Because I know we were talking about brush sizes and how they look so big on the camera. Because I have a size 8 or 10 watercolor brush for watercolor. So, and it is definitely bigger than what we use. I have a size 4 as well. And if you gasp at the cost of what these sable brushes cost in our sizes, yeah, my size 8 is definitely not a Winsor Newton Series 7. Because I am not Richie Rich. Are you there, Sad Cat? Do you want to come say hi to everybody? You want to come say hi? Come here. You like to go on film. There you go. There you go. You say hi to all the people. You can be an upside down mermaid. I don't know if you can hear her purring in the microphone. I might not be close enough to her. She's a very happy girl, right? You give me a big wet kiss, aren't you? Look, you're famous. Kuruniko's cat just reacted to the squeak. Yeah, she has some feelings. She will share her feelings. It's funny because she really is a pretty happy cat, but she sounds like just the most pathetic, I'm trapped under a rock, sad cat. She's a little feistier now that she's an old lady cat. She doesn't mind demanding what she wants. But luckily there aren't very many things she wants. She wants this. She wants whipped cream sometimes. And she has like this weird power. So this is not the world's most genius cat. We'll just say that. She's not. She's not a genius. She doesn't need to be. She's a house cat. This is all she has to do with her life. But she has like a psychic power in detecting when you might get whipped cream out. And at first I thought it was certain sounds, but now she comes into the kitchen before I've even started stirring or whatever sound it was that I thought that she knew. And it's just like, okay, you just have this weird psychic power. It's really, that's the only human food she cares about. And even then she's really fussy. It's like sometimes you'll get, like we get that spray stuff, and you'll get one and she just won't eat that one. It's like, what did that cow eat from a different part of the field or something? Like, what's your deal? Why don't you like that whipped cream? But unfortunately, this is the only way she likes to sit on me, so I cannot paint much while she's here because the tail does this. You don't even know it's doing that, do you? You don't know what you're doing with this. It has a whole secret life that you know nothing about. Share your purr with everybody. She's a good girl. I don't know if there's something else I can show. It's too bad I already showed you guys the wet palette, because I could show you the wet palette. Well, I have the kitty. If I finish the elf today, I'm going to finish these guys up. A little bit of an entry to finish in February, I guess. Trash Mama's cat has sensitive digestive tract and can't eat human foods. Yeah, a friend of mine's cat has a lot of problems with that. They have to buy him a special kind of food. And even if he just gets like the dog food or something, it's projectile is the way it's been described. Like, it's just, and he'll just spin around and get it everywhere, and it's really terrible. This one does kind of have tummy troubles, I think, because she does throw up a lot, but it's not like that. And often it is hairballs. Right, baby? Yeah, now you don't want to meow. Don't want to tell everyone how sad you are. She doesn't like her younger brother that much because he's energetic and he wants to play with her. And she grew up with a very hostile cat that gave her a bad example of cat socialization. So I always get jealous when people post these pictures online of their kitties all curled up together and snuggling. And I'm like, I've never had this with any of my multiple cats. Just reluctant acceptance is as good as it gets. Speaking that way, you're looking at something. What are you looking at? There you go. Show everybody your pretty eyes. She's like, I can sit here for another hour or so. I hope you guys don't mind. Right? Here goes that tail. What's it doing? You don't know. But yeah, she's our good girl. She very rarely does anything troublesome, and when she does, it's like you can almost always tell that she didn't mean it. She will wake my husband up now. She has started doing that. He's got like a little station where he plugs in his phone and his watch, and I think there's something else that goes there at night. And some mornings she'll come and start kind of playing hockey with his headphone case. That's what it is. So she'll try to knock his headphone case off if he's not getting up and being entertaining. And it's not that she wants food even. I think she doesn't like to be alone. So she hates that we sleep for 8 hours, because she sleeps, but not, I guess, a whole 8 hours at a time. So in the middle of the night, she gets sad and bored, and she's like, come do something interesting. You're so boring. So even though I go to bed like really late, I go to bed, I don't know, lately it's been 3 in the morning, which is not great. That's too late even for me. Bryce likes how her tail is going. Yeah, and she has no idea that this is happening. Like, this is an independent life form from the rest of the cat. She's not mad or whatever. She just has no idea that her tail is doing that all the time. But yeah, I go to bed around 3, and my husband gets up around 8, and she's like, nope, it's too long. Get up. Entertain me. Be my friend. Because they don't get fed until 10, so that they will try not to wake up the people. But that doesn't always work. Hey, Nomad Zeke. Carrie Michael Cosby. Yeah, it's like the word went out that there was a kitty. And everybody's coming in stream. If you start sleeping on your pillow a lot, maybe I could put a camera over there and we have kitty cam. We got her orthopedic pillows, and she's a very southern kitty. So if the temperature goes like below 65, she thinks we're all gonna die. So and we've been having real winter. So it's like 30s, and it'll go down in the 20s at night. So we got her orthopedic cushions and put them in front of. She has a couple of floor vents that are her favorites to kind of sit or stand in front of to stay warm. And we put the pillows there, so she has her little hangout spot. And sometimes she'll like hug them. She's like hugging the vent covers to get more heat. She's very sad about the heat. There's no such thing as too hot. And then in the summer we have a closed-in, screened-in porch, so we let them out there, and she'll just like melt into a sunbeam for hours at a time. You're scared it's not going to happen. Summer will always come back, my friend. It's okay. Giving everyone your Elvis face. She's not very photogenic because she doesn't really mean the Elvis face. It's just a weird thing that she does. Your little sneer. What's with your sneer? You're goofy. Can I put you down? No? Can I try and paint more base on this guy? No? Don't put your tail in paint, though. You don't want to end up like Archer did. You're totally going to put your tail in paint, aren't you? Nope, you're going to go down. Okay. Be careful. She probably got down because she heard my husband coming out of his room. She gets very excited when he does stuff. I'm not sure if that's because he's the guy that does the food most often, or just, something's happening. She's got to go check it out. Because she'll do that. She'll, like, bug me. I'll be at the computer or something, and she'll, like, bug me to pick her up and snuggle like that. Because I can't type when she does that either. Because she doesn't like to... She wants me to lean back a little. So she'll finally get settled, and then he'll stand up from his chair and come out. And it's like... She completely forgets that she's been trying for an hour and a half to sit and get petting, and she needs to go figure out what he's doing. It's like, you are a very silly girl. But that's her job. So Michael is here. Yeah, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term full English for breakfast. It's like you have eggs and beans and bacon and like blood sausage, potato. Like it's just this big breakfast. On Saturday, my husband chose to order what I think of as the full Reaper. So when we go to the Reaper factory, I think, is it Fridays, Michael, or is it Mondays? Maybe it's Mondays. I think it's Mondays. Ed and Dave, Ed and or Dave, I don't know which one actually, because we're not there as early as the donuts, but they bring in a bunch of donuts, and then there are these things, kolache, that seem to be very, very Texas, like a lot of donut stores don't make them. But Kevin was on DoorDash, and he's like, oh, look, there's this place that has the kolaches, and they have some donuts. And I don't actually love donuts, but I like French crullers, which you can't easily get in the United States, it seems. So he's like, and they have breakfast sandwiches too. I think they had croissant sandwiches. And the other place we like to go for croissant sandwiches, they're one of these stores where if you don't eat breakfast by 11, too bad for you. And you just heard my story about how I don't get up early enough for these breakfast rolls. Where'd my little tiny brush go? So he said, let's order from there. So we ordered, and I picked out, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 donuts just to try them. Like, I wasn't going to eat them all, but I was going to try them. And there were 2 boxes of donuts. Then they sent him a thank you mini box. Like, it was like, okay, this is not an order for 2 humans. It's insane. We did not eat most of these donuts. Like, I took pictures of some to have for paintings. And then we had, like, a bite here and there of some of them. But I posted it because Michael saw the picture on Facebook of the insane amount of donuts that my husband chose to purchase. Because sometimes if I don't supervise him on DoorDash, much more food than I expected will arrive at our home. Like, I don't know how many people the DoorDash drivers think live here, but I'm pretty sure they think more than 2 people live here. And I don't blame them, because it does seem that way sometimes. But I call, kolaches and a bunch of donuts the full Reaper breakfast now. Donuts and a crazy beard. Yeah, he grew his beard. And it's very luxuriant. It's a lot of beard. you know, like a lot of people, we had some COVID hairstyle changes. And I never actually thought that I would like him having a beard. I'm not typically, like, I don't, you know, most people can run their own lives. It's just the person I'm married to. I prefer not to have a beard. But so he kind of did it on a lark. And I'm like, you know, weirdly, I like it way more than I expected to. But it does have kind of a crazy professor, mad scientist fluffiness to it. If it hasn't been trimmed for a while. That poor cat is obviously that's a different cat. That is a cat that can in no way claim it is starving. That is 18 or 19 pounds of cat. And what his tragedy is that my husband has closed his office door and he's not allowed to do that. Water rat. Hello, welcome to the stream. I am working on Elanter, the Lost Prince. I actually had his little card around somewhere, but now I'm not sure that I misplaced it. There it is. So if you wish to buy one... Oh, I didn't switch my views. That's what's going on. You guys can't see what I'm working on. That's the number of this guy. And the goal of what I'm doing... Well, not the goal, but I was... long ago, I did an episode of how to steal a color scheme. So I liked the look of these pillows. It was like kind of an alternate autumn color scheme that wasn't like just all oranges and reds and stuff like that. So I talked about how you check your colors to find out whether they really match and stuff like that. So there's episodes on YouTube that have all of that stuff. Oh, and I did check, you know, I painted out swatches to make sure that it worked, you know, the colors I picked worked as a color scheme as well. And that's the metallic that I'm going to put on in just a minute. And I got them almost finished last week. So I wanted to get them finished up this week. Bryce loves kolaches. Everyone who goes down to visit Reaper loves kolaches, I think. Nomad Zeke says, I've rarely heard anyone mention those outside of my hometown. Yeah, I was not familiar with them until I visited Texas, and I grew up somewhere pretty multicultural where I was exposed to a lot of different foods. So I'm just doing a little bit of lining. I'm waiting for the base to dry before I do the wash, but I'm doing a little bit of lining on the parts that I'm going to paint metallic. And then I still probably want to paint his skin. Well, his ears aren't painted, and it's entirely possible that I would have painted this guy and then forgot that, regardless of whether it was on stream or not. That is 100% a thing that I've done. I was like, oh, elf ears, totally forgot about those. But I also haven't painted his hands. It's just that, the base and the metallics, I think. But I kind of, you know, in the spirit of the new year and all that kind of stuff, I've been kind of feeling like I have too many incomplete on-the-go type projects. And he was one of them. And I like how he's come out well enough that I would like to finish him. And then on a future stream, I can do a sample critique like you would get. Well, okay, it's going to be a little more thorough than you would get at ReaperCon because we're all running around going crazy at ReaperCon. And then we paint or do some touch-ups and stuff to show you what it would look like if you put a critique into effect. And there are past streams where I've done that. I did it on a bugbear and a Smith figure, and neither of those were like super fancy. They were, everybody paints for different purposes and different levels, so I like to try to recognize that with the content that I do on stream. I feel like I see just a little bit of wet paint still in there, but I don't know. Bryce says there's a place in Provo that has some amazing kolache, and we'll have to find out where they have them in Texas. Well, I guess just ask all the Reaper people because they get them at their donut store, I guess. And now so do I, apparently. Although they were, so Kevin's going to totally make us order from there again because they were out of cheddar jalapeno ones. So we just had cheddar ones. And he was very sad because he loves everything to be excessively spicy. Get my... So I use these because they fit on... This is actually smaller than a standard 7-petal. But you can just get these cheap ring ones from big box stores or craft stores, and they shouldn't cost you more than $2. Sometimes they even come with a lid, although that's not going to keep an acrylic a wash mix from acrylic paint drying from long, but it could be like if you had to run to the phone or something, it would help a little bit. I'm just going to mix a wash for that, for the base. I mixed together blue liner and what was my dark brown? Black and brown, because I don't want it to look too blue. I'm trying to gray it out. And I guess I needn't be worried about that because what it looks like is too brown. Nomad Zeke says we have a large Ukrainian Polish populace in my area, so the sweets are plentiful. Maybe I did try them in Toronto and I just don't remember because we have many immigrant communities with lots of delicious food traditions that they have kindly shared with us. Just use this brush. So it's actually a little purple because I had kind of a reddish brown and a blue liner, but I don't know. Purple works as a shadow for almost everything, so I'm not too concerned about that. This is a rare miniature that I painted that didn't start out having some purple in it somewhere. And that might be, you know, when I come back and I do the critique and stuff I want to add, it may be that what I want to add is purple in the shadows because I always want to add purple in the shadows. There was like a piece of lint or carpet fiber or something. The bane of my existence, basically. Oh, you may hear Sad Cat again. This is the cat that is, I swear, not starving. He's just sad because my husband hasn't opened the door. Although, what time is it? Ah, that's the problem. See, 4 o'clock, so they get fed at 10, 4, and 10. So, wet food, I should say. It's not like they don't have dry food out all the time. These cats are scam artists. Don't listen to any of their stories. So, he's partly upset because my husband closed the door. And then he's partly upset because it's 4 p.m., so why are his many needs not being attended to? Because he would also love if they went outside again, too. He's like, let's go outside and try to catch mice. Kevin does very little mouse catching. It's pretty much all Corbin. I'm not sure that metallic mixed well. Jedi Jared, I remember some fond memories of stopping to the town of West Texas to get kolaches. I mean, this was a pretty good store. I think I'd order from them again, just maybe not enough stuff. Like, literally the same amount that would get ordered for the Reaper factory, I think, was ordered to my house. That may be too much food. But, Michael, tell us what you did this weekend. Or I guess you're going to wait and tell us tomorrow, because it sounds like you had a pretty cool weekend. Maybe even more cool than having a full Reaper breakfast. I hear the door. He's worn my husband down. But my husband is not realizing what time it is, so he let the cat in, and he thinks that's going to solve his problems, and it's not going to solve his problems. So this metallic, which is a color that I really like, I'm not sure that it is available all the time. It is Pieces of 8, so this is one of the colors that we got, I think, not in last year's Brine Wind stuff, but in the year before. Since he is a prince, you'll have to give him a fancy headband. Metallics. And then I had not really thought about the gems at all, because these colors may be too desaturated work for gems. I don't know, but I'll probably try. And then adjust it later, because that's part of the fun of a limited color scheme, is figuring it out within the colors you've chosen. I believe that Clever Crow painted the store version of this miniature. Probably in a much less world market color scheme than I have chosen. Quindy is helpfully letting us know that Pieces of 8 is available in the High Seas Adventure Fast palette, which has some other pretty cool colors in it too. Let's see. Do I remember what they are off the top of my head? No, I don't. But is Kraken Ink in there? Because Kraken Ink is definitely a cool color that I recommend. Some pretty nice blues, I think, in that set. Or Storm Chaser blue, maybe. I don't know. I'm very bad about remembering. Kraken Ink is in High Sea Horrors. I'm very bad about remembering which number goes with which thing. I think somewhere I have a video with swatches of those colors, but I'm not 100% sure. That may have been from before I was doing this stream. Actually, you know what? Maybe we're gonna do this cheat thing with the cheat thing with the gems. I'm gonna paint them metallic and then come over them with clear, intense color. I got a little bit on his hair, so I'm just trying to get off. I'm getting a little bit everywhere. Because I am old and it is hard for me to see in the stream conditions. Quindy is very kindly sharing which colors are in each of the sets. Mermaid Scale is a cool metallic, colored metallic. And nope, that looks like the other one doesn't have metallic. But I was pretty impressed with the piratey colors. There were a lot of neat colors there. I see that I did not actually ring this gem a darker color, which will help it stand out. That gem I already did put metallic on. What's going on? Oh wait, he's got decorative thingamabobbers on his tracers. I feel like this brush is letting me down a little. Try to use my second string brushes with metallics, but sometimes they are worse than second string. They need to be demoted even further. Actually, I don't know that there is a further demotion. I think you just become a handle at that point. Give it to a sculptor to make sculpting tools with. So, stir stick for coffee. Well, with some of the things these brushes have been in, I don't know if they should be going in my beverages. Stir stick for paints, I have used some for that, because sometimes, even if you have a vortex mixer or something like that, sometimes you just need to stir your paint to really, get the pigments and other solids that may have gathered at the bottom and the binder that's separated out that floats on the top, to get everybody back happy together again. Sometimes you gotta stir. And I typically use these things. They're a party's best friend, apparently. I don't know about that. I question what kind of sad party this is. But I will reuse them over and over again, but I just went through all my paints, and I think that they are now too gummed up with paint to continue using that set, and I need to fork out another 98 cents or whatever it is. And get a new box of that. Sad Cat asked to come out, and now he regrets his choices. But my husband's in a meeting, so I think that Sad Cat's just going to have to... But yes, isn't he excellent at sounding super pitiful? I mean, that's... Grey Master says, I got a vortex mixer and stupidly gave away your paint shaker. So you liked a paint shaker better than the vortex mixer? Because I love my vortex mixer. Even though I do have to stir sometimes. It saves my hands and my paint. When I do that paint maintenance on like 800 paints or whatever crazy thing it was, it would have taken me forever to get through if I'd had to do it. They do two different things. Okay. So was your paint shaker one of those ones where you strap the paint in? Or did you have a automated stirrer thing? Because I've seen those, I think. I am going to give the weapon blade another coat, just because I always like to have 2 coats of paint on those surfaces for a sturdier paint film. I hear the sound of cat food in the kitchen, so it'll probably be a little less tragic in the hallway now. But it is amazing that this cat pulls off the I'm starving act when he's very, very clearly not starving. Technically, that would go up there, and that's annoying, but let's see. Vortex mixer, got it going really quickly. The paint shaker, you can leave it in. It had an elastic band. Oh, yeah, okay. I think I know that style. I had one many, many years ago, and the elastic band broke, and I never really dealt with that. I think when I was packing my craft or studio area up for the renovations, I think I just finally admitted that I probably wasn't going to keep using that. But one of those electric stirrer things I do kind of wonder about sometimes, because the paint can really get down in there. All right. There's a few areas that need cleaning up. But I don't know if I'm going to worry about it too much right now. I guess what I probably should have done was also have a very light or white metallic to put the highlights on this. But we'll call that something that I think about for the revision episode. Clean up the lining a little bit. And then do just a little bit of shading on a few parts. And then try the cool ink thing. I guess you can order spares, but it's in a couple years on the first one. Oh, you're lucky yours lasted that long, because I heard some. Maybe you had a different brand than I had, which I think was Robart, I want to say. And I think you can order new rubber bands. I think I was going to do it for Micromark, but I never had any. You know, I was sort of waiting to see if there was other stuff that I wanted to order, and I never did, because I like to avoid paying shipping fees, or at least, you know, before times. Nowadays, I don't know if you're going to get to avoid paying shipping fees on anything. Free shipping is not as viable an idea for companies as it used to be, even with minimum purchase. Nico says, one of our cats is on a diet and starts the piteous crying as soon as he steps away from the empty bowl. It's heartbreaking, but it's for his own good. He looks like a football now. Yes, this cat needs a little more for his own good, I think. I think we need to stop agreeing with his sadness and make him... He did lose a little bit of weight. We switched to this food that we thought was like way healthier. Like, we did all this research and stuff. And then he started having some intestinal distress. We'll just leave it at that. And when we went to the vet, they said he probably needs a higher fiber diet. And apparently this is like an orange cat thing, too, that they often have problems with that. So, and we had him on a food that had higher fiber before, but she's like, okay, here's the one with like the most fiber. And neither of the cats liked it. Like, they strenuously disliked that food. So we're like, okay, I think we need to go back to our original food and hope that that's enough fiber for this guy, because, you know, now the other cat is unhappy too, and she doesn't even have problems. So we switch back, and I mean, so far so good. But they're very used to having wet food, because then we used to have 3 cats, and one was very elderly. And he had, well, in the end he had cancer, but he might have had kitty IBD, like, for years before that. And he had he lost a lot of weight at a certain point. Then we started treating him, well, for a while we actually treated him with, what is it? It's one of the human antacids. Weirdly, and you give them like the human dose. It's like we just would go to the store and buy a normal package of this stuff that I can't remember which one it was now. Pepsid AC, because my friend's cat had to have it too. And you just give them like a human dose of Pepsid AC, and that worked for a couple of years. And then when that stopped, and he got really skinny and sick, and they weren't sure what to do, and they're like, well, okay, as a last stitch thing, we'll try giving him steroids. And that was like a miracle cure. Apparently they're quite strong. Like, he started with an injection, and then he was able to take tablets unless he got really sick, and then he'd have to have the injection again for a couple weeks and then go back to tablets. And so he managed to live way longer than anyone would have expected given his myriad of health problems. But we did end up feeding him wet food, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 times a day. Like, my husband would get up in the middle of the night multiple times and feed him food because he would just eat like a tiny little bit at a time. But so these guys got used to wet food being around all of the time. Grey Mouser said, we fostered tons of cats for about 3 years, and it's good to give them wet food and even add water unless it comes out too watery. Yeah, maybe we should add water because they seem to want to lick the gravy more than eat the food. But then if we get them the gravy flavors, they don't like that. They like whatever the gravy is on the pate flavors. It's like, okay, you're all very specific. But I guess that's a cat's deal, is being very specific. If Michael's still here, he's listening to this going, oh my gosh, I'm glad I have a dog. These cats seem very high maintenance. If it was just the big boy that, like, if we just had big boy, maybe I'd try not having kibble out all the time. But the little girl you saw earlier would get extremely pitiful if there wasn't. Like, if she can see the bottom of the bowl, that's kind of a national emergency. So, not a fancy base. Maybe I'll glaze some stuff in later, but we'll leave it at that. And so I just ended up mixing in, where is it? Oh, Siren Sand was the lightest color I had picked for this figure. So I mixed that into my made up grayish, my neutral. That was brown liner and black and brown. No, it wasn't. That was the wash. The base coat was Ancient Oak and Chestnut Brown, because green and red should turn into a neutral even if it wasn't a true gray. So, I mean, it kind of looks gray, I think, once it's all done, because it sort of goes with everything else. And I do that a lot. I mean, I think I had to do it on these guys, because there's, you know, a limited number of paints you can put in the little paint set, like the quick paints, or even the Learn to Paint kits. And if I do fake grays, which this one, I don't remember offhand, but it's probably the orange plus the blue. Not fake grays, but if I do mixed grays, then I don't have to waste a color slot on just a gray paint that doesn't get used for anything other than the base. Grey Mouser, also basically don't feed them fish cat food. Like salmon, it has crystal, so will cause urinary tract issues, especially with males. Our cats hate salmon, I don't know why, but they do. So they are protecting themselves. Kerniko, it's always fun in the cat food aisle at the supermarket. It's full of people going, well, he won't eat this. Can we try that? Grey Mouser's cats are not fussy like that. Oh, we have ordered special food because their very favorite is, and I know they shouldn't eat Fancy Feast, but we tried giving them the really good stuff and they didn't like it. But it's Fancy Feast Mixed Grill, which I think is cat for mystery meat, because sometimes they love it and sometimes they don't love it. And I'm like, well, I think there's different stuff in there every time. All right, where is my... So, instead of mixing water with my shadows for the metallic, I'm going to mix in brush-on sealer so it stays a little thicker, not thicker, more viscous in consistency instead of runny. So I very often mix stuff just with water, but I'm going to use just a little water here. But to make sure I can control a little more, I'm going to do that. to decide which side is the highlight, which side is the shadow. So one thing I really like to do with blades, okay, well, particularly for non-metallic metal, this is important, but it's going to help with metallics as well, is I make which part is the shiniest part opposite which part is the darkest part. So this is like a two-face blade like this, so it's going to be shiny here, dark here, dark here. Not always the same level of dark or light, but that concept. Here, Nico. Ours range from I'll eat anything to let me see the receipt. I need to know if it's expensive enough. Wow. Sentimental Minis and a party of three. Hello, welcome, Raiders. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm finishing up Elanter, the Lost Prince. And I forgot to use my special metallics tub. So I have a separate thing that I use for metallics, and I didn't use it. But I do. That is something I recommend to you guys if you are finding that you have problems with your little metal flakes getting in other areas of your miniature. I don't know if I love that. I normally like blue liner a lot as a shadow for metallics, but I'm not sure I'm loving it with the pieces of 8, but it's what I have, so I'm going to do it. In case anyone's wondering why I'm using a matte color, 2-shade metallics. Because we don't see the shadow areas of things as much, like they don't pop out to our eyes, so this is a way of dulling back the sheen as well as making the color darker. So it ensures that what I say are shadows on this are shadows, and then the areas that are more midtones and highlights, the light, the ambient light can play over and cause those, reflections that move around when you move an object. That is one of the things I think people who like metallics like to see, because that is how things really act. Whereas when you do non-metallics, you have to kind of choose, this is what the light is doing. And that won't, you make choices for like your main view angles, but you can't make it so that every single way that you look at it, the lights, the appearance of where the brightest lights are is going to shift and stuff. But they are much, much nicer for taking photographs of, in terms of not having to drive yourself crazy trying to not get the reflections where you don't want it. When you take photographs of metallics, then it seems like you can't really control where those like hotspot reflections are, and they might not be in the places you want them, or they might be too light. So that is why a lot of people who do display miniatures do non-metallic metals. I think probably left to my own devices, I would have preferred to paint. I mean, I guess I was left to my own devices, but saying choosing in the normal course of things, I probably would have chosen non-metallic metals for this guy, because most of the stuff on him is small. And I find that's the other benefit of non-metallic metals, is you have more control over little small objects to paint them up to look nice and crisp and stuff. It's not like a big thing, but I mean, metallics are a little chunkier than regular paint, so they do, they will fill in stuff you know, fill in detail like filigree and whatever a lot quicker than regular matte paints will. So that would be the other reason that I like to use them on small decorative objects. But Michael showed me how fun it can be to play with metallics as well, so I also enjoy doing that. And this was an opportunity to try out a new metallic color I hadn't used very much. And I also wanted to, when we were doing talking about the color scheme part, I wanted to show you that you can consider the metallics as part of your color scheme. Just as you can consider, you know, most of the time we think of skin colors as pretty neutral, but you can choose to use like a skin color that has a little bit of a green undertone or an orange undertone or whatever, if that fits in better with your color scheme. And the same is true of metallics. So I got a tied line there, but that happens. Bring out some of the little details there. He has a very fun weapon, I think. One of the tricks of doing the shaded metallic thing, I think, is to calm down and let it dry, which is, you know, you're kind of trying to, you want to get through this part and move on, but those thin applications of paint dry quickly, but they don't always dry immediately, so you need to give it a minute so you're not pulling up your paint. I'm probably just going to call that good. And now we'll do the Chitty Gems. So I painted the gems with the same metallic, which would probably be a pretty good color for this technique, I think. And now I'm going to find an ink or a clear paint. I don't think I have any cool ink colors. Do I have a good green here? Let's see what this green is. So this is phthalo green. That's pretty intense. Let go. I don't know. If I hate it, I guess I can do something later. So this is, you're probably going to think this is not an ink. This is high flow acrylics from Golden. This is Golden's version of this. So Liquitex has chosen to call their products by the things they're similar to. So they call their version of miniature paint acrylic gouache. Gouache is a separate kind of paint, so that's confusing on a number of levels. But what they're trying to say is that it has the fluid consistency and matte finish of a gouache, which is, those are two things people like about gouache. Golden, just everything's in acrylic, and they come up with some other name for it. So this stuff is their version of that. This is meant to be put in markers or used the way that people use inks. They just chose not to call it a crazy name. They put a little shaker in there too, I can hear. Now, can I dispense what is a reasonable amount of this? That's a different question. That's not too bad. So my hope is that we have this intense color that's kind of transparent, and you put that over the metallic, and it should create kind of a shiny effect as a simple way of painting a gem. So I don't know how well it's working on the camera. And I could do a similar thing as with the metallics and add a little shading, but this might be more effort than would fit a miniature sometimes. So if you're trying to do like some really quick stuff, that's a way to do some quick gems where you're not trying to paint the, okay, the shadow was here and there's a tiny reflection here and it takes small brushes and patience and whatnot. This is an alternative method for painting gems. Oh, I didn't get the metallic on this side. The gem part's not going to work. So we'll come back to that one. Oh, that looks like a gem as well. But there's like a ring of metal around it. That's like a gem set in a brooch or something. So I'm trying not to paint the part that isn't the gem. And yeah, he's got one of those on this arm as well. I don't think that you would put gems on your quiver, even if you're a very fancy elf. You might call that a gem. I need to get more of my metallic paint. I find metallic paint dries up on the palette really quickly. I don't know about you guys. And it gets goopy too, so I like to dispense fresh metallic paint a lot when I'm working with metallics. So I'll just use like a little drop and then add another one as necessary. I'm sure this is just a rivet, but because he's a fancy guy, I'm gonna make it a gem. I feel like there's not enough metallic on the brooch part there. I did not get that little part on his belt previously. There he is with quick gems, and even though that's like a more intense green than the one I used, I don't think it's too clashing. I think it kind of works because gems are more intense colors. And I think that means I'm down to his hands. Where are we time-wise? So I'm going to throw some paint on these so they can dry while I'm doing his hands. Did I have another one or two of these? This one. So for those who weren't here for this episode, these are base inserts that Reaper's going to have in their Base Boss Kickstarter. This one is lava, but the day that I was playing around with them and showing them to people, I wanted to show that you can use paint on bases quite a bit to just to indicate what they are, to change what they are, indicate what they are. So I don't have the finished ones over here right now. But I did like a swamp one, a moon base, a Mars landscape base. I think there was something else. And I gotten started on these, but I didn't finish them. But I was also testing how easy it was to cut and glue the material and stuff. So I cut, this section out of this one, and then I glued it on top of this one to make it a little, give it a little more. I mean, it is three-dimensional. That's not what I mean, but you know what I mean. So I was working on this one as kind of like a rivery type thing. And somebody mentioned something about doing a snow one. So maybe I'll see if I can do this as a snow one. I'm not sure if that edge is going to look weird, but I'll give it a shot. Snow or ice or something. because I guess there's like different kinds of snow and ice. I was watching Nova yesterday, and they had a thing about these like methane explosions in the Arctic in Russia, and then there's a similar problem but it happens in a slightly different way in Alaska. So the methane will just like literally explode up out of the ground and make, I mean, it's like a crater, but there's a rim of stuff because it was in a sinkhole that fell in. It's like stuff that came out. And then the more common sign in Alaska is a lot of, like, lakes will form, the stuff will melt enough that lakes are forming. And then methane will like bubble up through the ground. But all of the footage was really summertime. So I would like to say that I recently watched a bunch of stuff where I saw some examples of different snow and that could apply to here. But I did not, so alas, I have not researched what different kinds of snow look like. And we're just going to be faking that. Just trying to... Now, I really should have cut off the bubble for that one, which I'm sure would be easy to do. I'll cut it off this one, but since that has paint on it now, it would get messy if I... As usual, I am not recommending or condoning the use of sharp implements. I'm just showing you what I do. And I've been known to do many stupid things. This is a scalpel just because that's what I had on my desk. Because the secret miniature I'm not telling you about is a print, and there were a couple of those little support thingies that I didn't notice until I started to paint, and I had to scrape them off. There you go. Now you've seen the color scheme. You know that it's a print. I'm sure that these are not enough clues. I mean, it is something that Ron's shown, actually, I think. So it's not something you haven't seen before. It's just something that you weren't aware that I was painting. Alright, that clearly needs a wash. Let's see, is the wash that I already mixed up? It's a little dark in color, but let's do it. Just gonna refresh it, a bit more water. See what happens. So for these, I pulled out all the colors from the 2 Learn to Paint kits, and I put them in a little box that I'm going to try to keep with me when I do. Oh, that is very dark, isn't it? That's going to look silly. Wow, it looks like black on there. That's funny. So I'm going to try to keep them off to the side when I do streams, so that when I need to use general colors or people come in with color questions, I will have some kind of like little kit of colors to start with answering those questions. Let's see. Use the dark highlights. So I do not remember the colors that I initially had. These, oh, it'll work on this one though. That I initially had for these when I was painting these bases the first time. Wow, it's still pretty dark, isn't it? And that's an example of how color is relative, because it doesn't seem that dark there. But then when I start putting it on things that are lighter, it seems darker. And now that I'm putting this wash on, it kind of doesn't matter what exactly the color was that was under there, because it's not that color anymore. It's that color tinted by this wash. So if I use this dark highlights over here, even though it's not the exact same color, it's very similar in value. You can see it right there. And it's in the same color family, so it's going to work. So this is, I used to get real stressed out about matching exact colors and all that stuff. It's, if you have the same color family and you get the value pretty similar, you can usually touch things up or shift things and it's not going to be that noticeable, and it's not something to freak out and be nervous about. Probably just put too much water in that. Because I actually didn't even test my washes, did I? You guys should be yelling at me because I didn't do my normal wash test. So part of the reason is because these things help me. I can see it falling down from that surface. So unlike when I mix it up on a flat surface like a wet palette, I have a visual cue here as to how transparent or opaque this paint mix is. Now for washes and glazes in particular, I test anyway because despite the fact that it looks like barely nothing there, it might look more intense here. But some of the people you know that aren't checking their consistency, that might be why, because they're using visual cues like that. So they are checking their consistency, they're just using a different method. What consistency? Dilution. Because I could have mixed this with the brush on sealer, which is essentially matte medium, and had a more viscous consistency. What I'm trying to control here is the degree of transparency or opacity. But people will say consistency a lot when they mean opacity in miniature painting. I will paint the little rocks a different color. I just want to get the sand part done. Let's get some things drying before I go back to that last little part on our elf friend, and then he'll finally be done. And hopefully I can take pictures of him and show you next week. Which implies that I've figured out my showing pictures problem, and I have not. But perhaps by next week I will remember to ask my in-house tech support to look into that. Now every time I turn on OBS, it yells at me about the pictures not being in the folders, and it's like, yeah, the pictures haven't been in the folders for weeks now because you started acting weird and not showing the pictures in the folders. I don't know why you're telling me about it. But alright, there's a rocky beach. There's a, I don't even know what this is. Badlands, desert, something that's way too dark. And that is the snowy one drawing. That is way too dark. I'm going to have to fix that somehow, but that's a problem for... Oh, I forgot one other thing, of course, the base frame. Always important. And I didn't use black on this miniature. I used to customize my base frames all the time, and I'd stopped doing that. So these guys have it because there is no black in this kit. It's a really dark purple. So they have a really dark purple base instead of a black base. But I'm just going to give Mr. Elf a standard black base, I think. One of the reasons I stopped doing that on my own figures, while I like the idea of it being sort of a little subtle customization thing, if the base gets scratched, and let's face it, that's the part that's most likely to get scratched, do I remember what color I painted that to fix it, especially if I did a custom mix or something. So it's going to make life a little easier if just all base rims are black, and I can repaint them very easily. This always does end up making something look more finished when you finally get to this part. I guess I should have done his hands first, because now I'm going to put my hands on this black paint that's drying. because that very much seems like a thing I would do. I think there's a little piece of lint in there, but it's the base, so I'm not going to care. Alright, so his skin color was pasty and pastier, if I recall. Let's see. But I think I used this. I was painting him from darkest color to lightest, and I think I used that as the darkest color, which is Shoanti Sienna. I ended up using a fair number of Pathfinder paints on this one, so then this is kind of more the mid-tone of his skin, which was to match that top pillow. And then that's the highlight, is fair highlight. I'll put some of these out on the palette. Thank you everyone who joined despite the technical problems. Hopefully that won't be an ongoing issue for other Reaper shows. But it's always something, I guess, isn't it? I don't know if Michael's still here, but just in case he is, I better use the official Clever Crow pokey tool. Also, it is a very nice long pokey tool. But alas, it did not poke enough. What's going on in there? Okay. Well, I'm going to get one of the skulls then, because I think it's a wider pin. Especially if you have it gunked up with paint, then it's definitely a wider pin. Alright, there was like a little plug, then I think that finally pulled out. I do prefer dropper bottles, but I have to say that it is a pain that happens a lot. It's interesting, it looks kind of different along the edge because it wasn't as textured, so the wash didn't stick as much, but that gives it sort of a underlying surface, so I'm going to keep that. I think that's a paintbrush hitting the floor. I'm just mixing some intermediary mixes for the skin color, so I can just layer up real quick. And also checking the consistency. Medium and lighter tone skin tones often have a lot of white in them, so they can tend to get a bit goopy, and you'll get streakiness or rough transitions if you don't thin them down a little. Or if you thin them down a little and you're still having problems, and thin them down a lot. Did I use this on his skin? Sometimes I like to use like this instead of a really pale skin color. So I might just have a little bit of that out as well. Then figure out what I did with that paintbrush that hit the floor. Because that does look like it might be the one I want. So I'll just show you my mixes real quick for the skin, which, I mean, I may not end up using all these because it's just a little area, but just to give you the general idea of what I do. So that's the Shoanti Sienna. And then I mixed it a little bit with the Taldan Pink to make these transitions. And that does feel a little thicker. And then this is the pale highlights? Fair highlight. And that is Osiren Sand. So now that I have it all mixed up, I should be able to just go boop, boop, boop up through the levels. Other than, of course, his hand needs like an actual base color paint. Do that. Well, both his hands. Because I think this hand is painted the same. Oh, is that the... Oh, it looks darker. Maybe I mixed something with the Shawanti when I was first doing this. I typically put down a mid-tone color and then do shadows and highlights. So part of what I was doing with this figure was practicing working up from the darkest color, which is something that I started doing after a workshop with Sergio Calvo Rubio. And it is nice and quick, but I'm still not perfect at guessing, okay, how dark does it need to be? So sometimes I get it a little too dark. And that may have happened in this case, that I ended up covering up all the... That I ended up mixing a custom color and then covering it all up on the face. But that was like, what, how many... When I started this figure, it actually was fall, so that's how long ago that was. A fall color scheme made sense because it was fall, and that's why I got a flyer for some fall pillows in my mail that I thought would be a cool color scheme to steal with you guys. I keep getting that drop of water on the ferrule thing, which I totally hate. It messes me up a lot. I'm pretty sure this is one of my side brushes. I'll put that away. Have I created my system for figuring out which brushes which? No, I have not. So even though this is a bigger brush, it's a newer brush with a better point, and I will find it easier to control. Now that I've done the metallic step. Not that I think metallics like totally ruins your brushes or anything, it's just if I can avoid using a nice brush on it, I typically will. That hand, and just check for anything amiss on this hand. Let me see where we are time-wise. So I'll go over a little since we started late. Don't know if I will get to these bases because that wash isn't even dry yet. But I will just keep them as kind of fill in stuff for a future project. Well, fill in stuff for a future day. I have an idea what I want to do next week because I think it's actual Valentine's Day on the show, and I thought maybe it would be fun to paint pink, which is not a color that we always paint that often. So I thought it might be kind of interesting to maybe try out different shade colors and stuff like that. Like, it's been a while since I painted pink, so... and I wouldn't ever say that I painted, like, a ton. I mean, certainly I painted some, but I don't know if I'd say I have painted so very many pink things that I know exactly how to paint pink. So I think kind of explore some of that on the show. I have the, well, I don't remember what her I think Reaper calls her a wizard or something, but I think she looks like a princess. She's got the classic princess hat with the little piece of cloth, you know, the cone hat with the little piece of cloth at the end. So I have a bunch of her, so I thought I would paint a pink dress, but then also try to look for some kind of tentacle pink type monster that would be, so, you know, the monstrous pink, because that's something that I think people use a lot inside of mouths and stuff like that. But then also the kind of pretty pink for clothing. Since there are certainly character types that it's appropriate to, and if you're trying to, you know, paint characters for a table and have them each stand out from each other so they're easy to see and whatnot, pink is a color not to overlook. It's worth having in, you know, as a color scheme. Even there are wizard stars on the hat. That is true, Bryce. There are wizard stars on the hat, but it's almost like she's more going to like a Halloween party wizard than being a wizard, I think. Because how many wizards are really announcing their presence with the stars? And also, she's a bones mini, so if I wanted to, I bet I could make it so there aren't stars on her hat. Perhaps I should do that. Or she can just be pink wizard. So I meant to go do my hunt for tentacle monsters, which hopefully not against the Twitch terms of service, to talk about tentacle monsters. I meant to go do that before the stream, and then I forgot. So I'll have to go through my stores and see what I have, but I feel confident there must be some kind of monstrosity around here that would be appropriate to paint in garish shades of pink. So here, I'll tell you a true story, and I'm going to go ahead and reveal this on the blog just because I feel like it. So when I was painting this guy, I got, let's zoom in a lot here. I was working on the sword, and there's like this bit on the end, or the base of the sword. And I'm like, well, I mean, it seems kind of like it's leathery, but is that what it's meant to be? So I texted Bobby, which I realized that this is why I use that luxury occasionally, because I'm painting the example you guys can go off of in the store when people have questions. What is that thing? I hope that I've painted it well enough to help answer that question sometimes, because I've certainly been there on the what is that thing when you're trying to paint something. And he's like, I don't know, leather, I guess. And it's like, well, okay then. He's like, I just thought it looked cool. Well, now it is leather. So I would say that means don't stress out about what the thing is supposed to be, because they don't always know. Make it what you think it should be. Now, often they do know, and they've done research on bits of armor and weapons and stuff that I don't know what they are. I'd say the wrong name of all the time. But that still doesn't mean that you have to stress out about whether you're painting something right. If it seems plausible to you, then it's right. And you're fine. Sculptures, but it looks cool. Yes, exactly, Bryce. Yeah, I was trying somewhat lower contrast non-metallic metal with that, with those swords, because the figure overall was supposed to be so dark. Because that was Ron's vision and dream. Now, I'm not going to take the skin on the hands up as bright as the face, because I want the face to be more of a focal point. Which is funny, because I think if I actually do this, my hand is paler than my face skin, but this is an artistic decision. I might pop the knuckles just a little. I like to pop the knuckles as well. Because if you look at our knuckles, let's see if I can get it to happen under the camera. So the whole white knuckle idea, that's happening for two reasons. So one is that the light is coming down and hitting it, just like we're always talking about lighting. But there's also like the cartilage or bone or whatever that's under there. It's close enough to the surface of the skin that you're seeing it and it's lightening up the color of my skin. So I tend to pop a little extra highlighting on knuckles, elbows, and knees are all places where that happens. And you can see a little more of the underlying structures. They tend not to be fleshy parts of the body, even on fleshy people like myself. Wow, his face really lost all that pink, didn't it? I think we gotta bring some pink back on his face. Now, since we're not seeing the whole knuckle, and that hand is definitely not a big part of the story of this figure, I'm going to leave that there. I think I might even darken it a little as it rolls away from the body, but I'm going to take that Shawante Sienna and thin it down and put a little on his face. And for that, I will once again use the brush on sealer, aka matte medium, because I want to have, when I'm doing that kind of glazing, I want to have a lot of control over the paint, so I don't want it to be all runny. It's not a wash, it's glaze, and I'm being very intentional about where I put it. And that is also definitely the thing that I check regardless of where I mix it, because that's more color than I expected, even for as thin as I mix that. I mean, it just looks like there's nothing there. I can go ahead and use that because I think he's so pasty looking that I would probably just end up doing multiple coats if I, oops, sorry, I just hit the camera. Sorry if it shook. In fact, I probably should be using a more vivid red because the paint's so thin that this may end up not having a lot of effect to tint it. But I think it's helping. Just have to decide whether I need to come back in. It's not going to be apparent on the camera, I would almost guarantee. This is probably something I should have saved for the when I look at it later and pretend it's a contest entry deal, but there it is. Well, I don't even think that was a piece of metallic. I think that's a piece of glitter left over from Christmas. Alright, I'm gonna give his base rim another coat because, as I've mentioned, paint film. I should get my paint film down for you guys. So when I was doing, if you go on YouTube, there's a video that I did at either Virtual ReaperCon or RVE that was additives, mediums, and pastes. So my, and one of the things I wanted to do was kind of explain why you, how your paint is made, like what the paint chemistry is on a very basic level, to keep that in mind when you decide whether you want to put something in it or not. So one of the things I was talking about was this idea of paint film, and that's I ended up pouring a bottle of Reaper paint into a styrofoam bowl with a piece of cut up sandwich bag in it, because so sandwich bags are made of a kind of plastic that acrylic paint doesn't stick to. So acrylic paint sticks to almost everything, but that one PPE plastic, I can't remember now, it's P something plastic, it doesn't stick to that. Polyethylene, I think that's it, polyethylene plastic. So I had to leave it there to dry like days, maybe a week, and then I popped it off, and it's like a film. I mean, it's a layer, it's a piece of material, and you can do this with it, because acrylic paint is also kind of flexible, and that's what you like. That's what's your paint job is you want it to be a film that's flexible and sturdy, so you can kind of rub it a little bit, or knock it against something and it's not going to chip or crack or whatever. So when I say I like to do 2 coats so there's a solid paint film, that's what I mean. I want there to be enough thickness of paint that whatever I put on top of that surface is just acrylic paint sticking to acrylic paint, so then I can get fancy with layers or glazes or whatever. But under that, I want there to be this foundation of paint that's a little bit flexible, a little bit sturdy. So I always like to do a minimum of 2 coats of paint. Particularly on these plastic miniatures, because I don't prime them. So if I've primed something, then there's already at least 1 coat essentially on there. But with these plastic things where I'm painting directly on the plastic, and I'm not just doing that for like Reaper PR, that is 100% how I paint the plastic miniatures. If I don't have to prime it, I'm very happy to skip that step. And then I prime the metal things. And I prime resin and prints because I don't know if they take, I haven't done the same kind of tests as I've done on bones to know if they take the acrylic paint as well as like the bone style plastic does. And I'm not about to test a bunch of resin and print miniatures, put them through the kind of abuse that I put the bones through when I did the tests. So I'm willing to just prime those. But these, I'm very happy to not have to prime. But that, I know that if you're painting for games and you want to get stuff on the table as fast as possible, you'd rather not do a second coat. But I think it's worth doing a second coat. So that's why if you do get this kit, I think because Ron actually asked me, and I didn't bring the other guy out because I didn't know I was going to talk about this. But he said, well, what happens if you only do 1 coat? And I'm like, okay, there's going to be some colors where it'll look all right, but there's going to be some colors where it won't. I'm like, that orange, that is the color that you asked me to put in the kit, that's not going to look right with just 1 coat. So instead of just telling him about it, because we're visual people, and he might think I was just being a painter and being very precious, I took another figure and painted it with just 1 coat for all the base coats, and then did all the rest of the steps and showed him what it looked like. And there were some things like, it didn't look that bad on the brown leather, or I think the blue turned out all right too. But the skin did look really bad. There were places where it had, sometimes you're just using one of those semi-transparent colors, and there are just places where a lot of the underlying surface shows through, especially if you're trying to be careful. So you have a more controlled amount of paint on the brush. Like if you're just slopping it on like I was doing for this base, that's just 1 coat of white, and it's not, well, let's turn the brightness back down. So you can see the gray, well, that's actually black. You can see the black a little under there, and you can see the gray just a little under there. But 2 coats should do this. But if I was trying to be more precise with that white and just paint it on, because I slop that on. But if I'm, carefully painting a face and I'm trying not to cover up too much detail, more of that surface shows through. And white probably isn't 100% the best example for that. Well, actually I have, well, this is Numenera Rust, not Goblin Orange, but I bet it is going to be similar because it probably had to be similar pigments. So if I take a controlled amount of that, you can see a lot of that gray base under it, where if I slop on a bunch, the orange is much richer because there's enough paint on there that's like a couple of coats almost. So that was a lot. When I did the test one, that was kind of like what the goblin skin looked like. It was more like that side. If you do 2 coats, it's going to look like that side. So there's your random trivia for the day. Maybe I'll try to... I thought I had put my little paint film somewhere around here so that I could show you guys, but I think then I moved it again later. I think I was worried about, even though I put it in a little baggie and it should be fairly sturdy, but I was worried that it was going to... I would put something on it and crush it. Not that, it's sturdy, but it's not there's no underlying surface like there is with a miniature, so it's only so sturdy. But I did the same thing with brush on sealer, and the matte medium changed it enough that it was actually much more brittle and didn't really do the paint for me. It came off in chips. But I've been meaning to take a bottle of gloss sealer and do the same thing, because the binder part of paint is what makes that film, and medium is pretty much the binder part of paint. There may be some additional things in it, as you can watch in that video that Quindy just linked, where I talk about the various things that you can add to paint. But also, one of the best parts of that video, I will spoiler alert right now, where is it? This stuff, if you get something from Reaper, and you want to make sure that something stays in production in Reaper, buy some of this. So this is the matting agent that is added to this to make it, to change it from a gloss sealer. I mean, the gloss sealer is actually slightly different, I think. But essentially, you could make your own version of matte sealer by adding this to it. And if you have a paint that's a little too shiny from another company, you can add this to it and take care of that. Anne made this for Reaper, and as far as I know, Reaper is the only company that is selling this direct to the public. And I don't mean miniature company, I mean company. You cannot buy this straight from Golden. You can buy matte medium or matte something else, but that has other stuff in it. So if you mix that into your paint, you're making it more transparent, as well as making it more matte. Liquitex doesn't sell anything like that. I didn't check everybody, because there's like hundreds of acrylic manufacturers in the world. And you definitely want to shake this up. And you want to add as little as possible. So, hold on, I'm going to mute just a second. So I just want to put that on the Vortex mixer. But when I say you add it to a paint, now these are Reaper paints, so they're not shiny, but somewhere I have a shiny paint. I'll just use this as an example. So let's say this was my paint pool, and this was a paint that was just a little shiny, like it's not like, you know, crazy shiny. I've used this for a long time, so of course it's acting up a little. Because you can see, I don't know if you, there's like a powderiness that poofed out when I was doing this. This is little particles of stuff. That is how matte works. So if you've ever had problems with spraying like dull coat or something like that, wow, it's really jammed in there too. You probably oversprayed and got too much of this stuff on it. So it is thickening up in here because I haven't used it for a while. And paint does this too. If I find a paint has a weird consistency, I will often pop this dropper off and find out if something like that is lurking in there. So let's see if this pushes through now. Wow, that is really stuck good. Well, this is going to turn into a problem I'll solve later. I will just get it directly out of the bottle. So I put that off to the side. And if I'd done a dropper, I would have put it off to the side too, because this is probably more than I need. Like, I would rinse the brush off, get like that, mix it into my pool, do a test swipe and see if it's still shiny, and then add a little bit more if I needed to. I mean, after it dries. Because you can, if you put too much of this in, it's going to frost the same way if you spray too much dull coat, or your dull coat, it's like too humid when you're spraying or something. Because you can actually make frost with this, is the other cool thing about it. If you're trying to make special effect frost, I have a diorama I did this on. So as it dries, you should start to see like a cloudiness appear. and I may not have stirred this one well enough. Because that's the reason, like, always shake your brush on sealer. Because that stuff is heavier, it's going to fall to the bottom. So if you're using your brush on sealer, particularly if you're using it as sealer, and you didn't shake it enough, like the first third of the bottle, you're concentrating that matting agent to make more of it than the formula says. So you're more likely to get frosting with these too. And this is what I mean by frosting, this white goop that you can see as this stuff is drying. So that's when you get frost effects with your sealers. That's what's happening, those little particles. And that's what matting agent is. It's little particles. Because what happens, so this is a shiny surface. And what that means is the light rays are coming down. We'll zoom back out. Light rays are coming down. And they're bouncing off. And they're all going in the same direction. So when you put some of this in, you make the surface, you know, microscopically irregular. So the light rays come down, but they each bounce off in different directions so you don't get shine. And you can see what I mean about frost. That is frost in a bottle. That's why you want to be adding that to your paint in a very conservative fashion. But as frost, it's nice because if I ended up getting that somewhere where I didn't want it, or I wanted to push it around, or I'm like, oh, this part's just a little too thick, I can kind of use just a damp brush and then let it dry again and move it around or make it look more irregular or natural or whatever for like a diorama. So I had like a plastic sheet that I did this ice effect out of a book with. Like you put wax underneath it and you melt it and it makes this crackling ice kind of look. But where that met, it was like a little pond, and where that met the shore, so you can see it's not quite as opaque or thick now where I went over it with the damp brush. It didn't blend in, so I used this stuff along the edge to blend in the snow effects and the frost and stuff. And I think I use it on some other one too for something. But so it's very interesting to me that Reaper is the only company that gives us direct access, the consumer, to this stuff, just in as pure a form as it is possible. And like I'm sure there's some medium in there because to make it liquid. But I very much want this product to never go away from Reaper's lineup because it's nice that we have this as a special effect, as well as if you have paints that you like from other companies but they're a little bit shiny. I should get some of my privateer press paints when I did the dark skin samples. Let's see if I can roll back and get those. I have a folder now, so it makes it a little easier. So when I was writing my dark skin article, I wanted to include other paint companies since I've organized my paints now, so I can do that. And you can tell which ones are the privateer press ones when I do this. Like, you don't need the P to be there. Because they're not shiny, but they're like eggshell or something compared to Reaper being fairly matte. And then there are paints that are even more matte than Reaper that are like ultra matte, and they almost, like, it's hard to get a real nice dark color with a super ultra matte paint. But that one's the worst one. Maybe I can find that paint and try out the anti-shine stuff on it another day. So, I don't know if that was remotely interesting. Everyone's gone really quiet, so I think it was probably super dull. But thanks for sticking it out through the super dull technical conversations and also the technical problems that we suffered at the top of the show, and for sticking it out with me to finally finish a lantern, The Lost Prince Who Refuses to Ask for Directions. So I will try to get some nice pictures of him for next time, and then we'll find out. Anti-shine is super dull. That is a true fact, Sean 42. We will find out exactly how much I screwed up on this guy when I take pictures, and you can see all the places where I missed. Like, okay, there apparently I missed the other metal band, so maybe I'll fix that before next week. But we're going to do pink, and if anyone has any suggestions for good miniature storage systems, please send me a private message. Pictures, links, all that stuff are welcome, because I want to finish my article with advice for people on how to store their very many paints that they should have, like I do. Thank you for coming along. I'm sure Quinny's going to get us a raid. We'll go somewhere cool. Pure Nico says they were just absorbing the knowledge. Well, I hope some of the knowledge was useful, and I'll see you next week, and we'll try to figure out how to paint pink. Bye, guys. Oh, where's my thing here?